Hello and welcome to Your Neighborhood Show. I'm Carolyn, and I've started this podcast because I'm really passionate about building community, and I want to bring out stories from our neighborhoods about connection as well as disconnection. And it's come from my own life's journey of growing up in Mumbai, India, in a very connected neighborhood where pretty much everyone knew everyone. Then I came to Australia in 1988, and over my 22-year marriage, got inadvertently disconnected, and then realizing this and wanting to make good my life again. And so I went out on this journey of building a support network for myself. And in the process, I realized that it was a pretty serious situation out there, that there were many others like myself that also feel disconnected at times in their lives. And so the aim of the podcast is basically to draw out those stories of connection and disconnection so that we kind of normalize and be okay with being disconnected at some time in our life, because we all go through things in our lives and it's quite normal. But how do we overcome that? And so that's the aim of the podcast. Welcome again. Welcome to Your Neighborhood Show. I'm Carolyn, and our guest today is Deb. Deb is local to Brisbane. And I have to admit, by the way, first of all, that before I continue this introduction, on my way here, I was in a hurry to get here, and I dropped some coffee on my dress, and I'm a little bit embarrassed. So you're supposed to look at my face and Deb's face. Don't look anywhere else. Anyway, coming back to the introduction. So Deb is a Brisbane local, and she is, I've known her for about a year and a half. But just leading up to this conversation today is when I've actually gotten to know Deb. And I think it's because I was so intentional about, getting to know her so that I could have this lovely conversation, which you're about to hear. And so in reflecting on that, I realized that when you're intentional to get to know somebody, you can get to know them in like 2 hours, and what that's done for me, Deb, it's had me have a much higher level of appreciation for who you are as a woman, and your resilience and your courage and all of that. And I feel so much more connected to you. So thank you for sharing and making yourself vulnerable and agreeing to come here today. For our guests, for our listeners, Deb is also a mother, a grandmother. Our grandchildren play together. She's a wife, a sister, an amazing cousin. I know you spend a regular time with your cousin who's facing a challenging time, and that absolutely moves me. Also, she's a great friend because we have lots of fun together. And and a volunteer, an amazing volunteer. She volunteers in 2 or 3 different places, and a very caring one as well. But last but not least, Deb is a nurse, a registered nurse, and she's worked in a few different areas, emergency as well as theatre, as well as women's support, women's clinics. Women's clinics.
And refugees, yeah.
So welcome, Deb, and get ready for a lovely conversation, people. So I'd like to perhaps go back to your childhood and ask you, whether, what was that like? I remember you saying you grew up in Tully, up in North Queensland. I hadn't even heard of the name till I actually spoke to you, Tully. Of course, I'm from India, so... but tell us about your childhood and your formative years as a teenager. How was that for you?
It was pretty amazing because I was in a small town of 2,000 people, and Tully is the wettest place in Australia, so we spent a lot of time in the rain. I had cousins and aunties and uncles that all lived in the town, so we would always get together. You could walk to any of your uncles or aunties and just turn up and have a cup of tea or cordial and biscuits, and off you go. So it was a great place to grow up. And I was into horses, so I was into pony club. So I was very adventurous because I had independence with my own transport, basically. And I would spend hours and hours by myself and come home at dark, which most kids did in those days.
I remember actually that in our childhood, my childhood, back in India, our entire neighborhood knew everyone. And, my parents were not concerned. At 8 o'clock at night, we'd be at some friend's house. Tell us about your teenage years.
Oh, they were interesting because I was riding my horses everywhere and stuff like that. And then eventually I was in grade 11 and I wasn't doing so well. I was quite rebellious. And then my father found me a job.
Wow. Your father found you a job.
Yeah.
And what was that?
It was in the middle of the Marlborough stretch on a cattle stud.
Wow.
So I went there.
So how far was that from where you were
A
from
long
Tally?
way, like I think 600 kilometres or something like that.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And no phones and stuff in those days.
My parents didn't have a phone because they were changing houses. And so basically I got off a Greyhound bus with a saddle and a bag of clothes at 2:00 in the morning and started work the next day. Yeah.
And did you know anybody at that place?
No one at all. There was another 2 girls that were in a unit beside me.
So what was the idea, do you think, of your dad sending you to this place for?
That I'd grow up, which had happened.
They what? Sorry, for you to grow up.
Yeah, that I would
Right.
grow up, which happened.
Wow.
Yeah, we worked really hard from daylight to dark, feeding Brahman bulls and breaking the smaller bulls in for sales. So, and then on the other property, which we used to go mustering on, we would be there go up at 4:00 in the morning and come home at 8:00 at night. Yeah.
Goodness me. So your dad sends you to this place about 4 or 5 hours away in terms of distance, driving distance?
Probably
More.
Yeah, more in those days. Yeah.
And you don't know anybody there at this farm. It's out in the whoop somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can't contact your parents easily.
No, can't contact anybody. So eventually they would send a telegram and then they would ring that night. Yeah, but I couldn't just pick up a phone and call them, and it was 2 weeks to get a letter. Yeah, so I was very homesick.
Wow, yeah.
So,
and do you think that has contributed to your becoming more resilient and learning to deal with life as it throws you stuff?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It was a really good experience for me. It was a very hard physical life, but it definitely made me change my mind about where I wanted to go. And I went back and studied.
But I remember you saying that when you were on that farm you were, it was so remote that your Sunday outings was on your horse to go and get ice cream from the local town or something like that.
We used to drive about, ride our horses about 5 miles down to a service station and get ice cream and ride back because none of us had cars. So then basically in Marlborough there was a pub with a little bit of, they did the post office stuff, and that was it, and a service station about 5 miles away. So
I'd be bawling my eyes out.
I did. I did lots of crying with the bulls because I was so homesick. But I survived.
Yeah.
So there you
go. When I think about it, crying is actually quite therapeutic. It's a really good thing to cry.
Yeah.
I remember I've done a lot of crying in my life, but when you cry, it's almost like it washes over and it kind of heals you. If you cry, like really sob, it's like washes over you. And then after you, of course, you have swollen eyes and snotty nose and all of that, but then you feel so much better. So it's like almost like a coping mechanism, but we don't think of it as that. We think of it as, oh, you shouldn't cry. You shouldn't cry so much, You should be happy all the time kind of thing. So would you say that crying helped you when you were out in this remote?
Yes, because that's all I could do. I couldn't change any of my circumstance. I couldn't ring anybody and say, I'm really sad today. So I cried and then I got up and went to work, and I was physically exhausted most nights because the work was really physical.
Yes.
And the bulls were rather challenging, as
That's
Brahman bulls are.
That's just amazing. I mean, I don't know that I could send my child so far away. And how old were you again? 17?
16.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I would never do it to my child, but...
But obviously your father had some level of confidence in your abilities to deal with,
yes.
life
Yes.
and whatever
I would have done it near Tully, but I went to a place called King Ranch outside Tully, and I worked there a couple of days as a jewelleroo. But because I was a girl, they wouldn't let me go out to the camps on the outer stations to muster cattle. So this place had other females. So that's why my father said, well, you could go there.
Right. And did you make many friends over there while you were on that? Like, have you maintained friendships?
No, not really, because it was just sort of a part in time.
Transient kind of 6 months.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it was just, 6 months, small amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a learning experience. Come, hey, Deb, have a look at your life and have a good think about where you want to go.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I think so. And if I talk to parents today, I mean, it was such a good experience.
Absolutely.
I would recommend that if someone is being really rebellious, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
To go to the country, experience some physical work and, get on with life then.
Amazing. And then from there you went to you went to Caboolture because your parents had moved over there while you were at this place, and so you went back to school, to high school.
Yeah,
in
I went and
Caboolture?
finished my last 2 years and did really well, and then I had a job in the public service. Yeah,
and then from there, what happened next? I think you said you got married.
Yes, and I had 2 children, and very close, 18 months apart, and that was early years. Well, it's lovely. The children were great, but it was very lonely and it was very hard. Yeah.
So this was back in Brisbane now. You're back in Brisbane?
In Caboolture.
Oh, you're still in Caboolture.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. And you were saying that you were married to your previous husband for about 10 years or something like that? Yeah. And then when you separated, tell us about that, because having 2 children, and I know I got separated from my husband 15 years ago. My oldest daughter was 21, and then my son was 17, and then my youngest was 7, and I was a single mom for the last 15 years. I found it really challenging, and actually I was quite isolated because for most of my married life I kind of inadvertently let myself get isolated, which is why I love doing community work and so passionate about connection. But how was it for you when you split up and you had these 2 children and on your own? And you said you didn't have a career at hand as well.
I was doing my nursing training, and I was in my 2nd year of nursing training. And so it was a really difficult time because we worked shift work and then we studied. It was the old hospital system. And so I was working shift work. But I was really lucky because I'd had established these really great friendships with these women that had children about the same age as mine. And I met them the first time through playgroup, and then our children went to kindy together. Then they went to primary school. And some of those children still have friendships today because of how they grew up together, which is amazing. So these people and my parents and other friends just minded my children. Someone would come and stay in my house if I worked night duty. Sometimes I'd get my roster and didn't know in the next 2 days who was going to pick up my children, but someone did. So that was amazing. And that was because I had established these friendships.
Wow, like a village. You had almost like your own little village around you.
Yeah, I had a lovely village of people around me who I couldn't have done without because there was no formal daycare centres like there are now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And probably a good thing, I reckon.
Yeah.
Because children respond, or rather, in my opinion, children respond and grow to be healthier adults when they are looked after by people whom they know and are loved by and all of that. And I grew up, like I said, in India, and it was it takes a village to raise a child. So I'm a complete village kid. My mom and dad were away for most of my childhood in terms of my father was in the army and my mother worked long hours. So I was raised by my grandmothers and half a dozen other elders in the community. So that was a time in your life when you felt quite connected, even though you were having a challenging time through your divorce and learning a new skill to make ends meet. So that's amazing. Yeah. And so then you said you were also sharing with me about your career times in your career where you worked in different places in the hospital, but some of it was where you felt great. And so tell us about that.
First time after I graduated, I used to work in the emergency department because the emergency department had permanent night staff. So I went to work there and I loved it because the patients were just so incredible and all had a story. And in the emergency department, there's no airs and graces, and life, you see life as it is. And I really enjoyed that. And then I went on to work at the
So just to get a little bit deeper over there. So you said you were people coming in an emergencies department, you felt more close to them. Why was that? Why do you think if you had more of a connection with them? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Because they came in vulnerable and sick, and they were looking for care. And a lot of emergency department is sheer routine, most of it, with about 3% sheer terror thrown in. And so, you know, and you got to really know their stories. And I really enjoy meeting lots of people. And, you know, I could meet up to 70 people a day sometimes.
Wow.
You know, on a busy day if you were triaging. So that was really great. I really enjoyed that.
When you come in a really, if it's emergency, you're in a serious condition of some sort, and you have to, you've given yourself to whoever's there, the nurse or the doctor or whatever. And so, you're very vulnerable and there's nothing to hide. Basically, you can't hide. You have to just say, this is what I'm dealing with, kind of thing. And I think that's amazing. I mean, there's it's good to know that there are nurses out there that really, really care and want to, make the patient almost like their own relative, kind of thing. And I think you give me the sense that you that's how you were as a nurse, you know.
Yeah. And it was very interesting because every day you learn something new.
Wow.
So that was a really good part of emergency too.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great attitude as a nurse to go there. I mean, it's not just you're providing a, caring service, but you're also learning from the patients.
Yes.
Isn't it? Yeah. Like you can learn from anyone.
Yes, that's true.
And then you went to theatre. So tell us about that.
I went to theatre because my children were in the school behind it. That's my sheer motivation for getting jobs was how it would make my life easy, because I think as a single parent, there's things that you can't change, but don't make your life too challenging. And so I went to theatre, which was a totally different environment and which I didn't really enjoy, because the patients would come in talking and we would anaesthetise them. And then when they started talking, we would send them to the ward.
Of course.
So, different environment completely from the emergency department.
And would you say you felt, when you were in the emergency department, because you were talking to not customers, your patients, you felt quite connected with them. And then in theatre, how was, in terms of connection and support, and how was that for you?
Well, basically you don't have a lot of connection with the patient, and you're in a contained environment with the same people all day. And I found that really difficult. And I did a lot of crying there too.
Oh. I do remember you saying you were standing out of the window and staring and crying and crying and crying. Even though it wasn't raining outside, it felt there was rain coming down from your tears.
And my kids would say, go and get another job. But it was the job that suited me at that time for my children.
Yes. You had to make it work for timings and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that you're so, you just change wherever your direction to fit in with your life. And that's it's a great coping mechanism. You don't get stuck in a particular way. You maneuver, almost kind of, steer the ship in a direction to make it work for you in your life. What about, do you think there would be a time in your life when you've had a really, felt really low and unsupported? Has there ever been times like that?
Yes, there was a time where I had some major events in my life that caused me lots of anxiety and depression, and I wasn't sleeping, I was agitated, and I had suicidal thoughts. And so because of my knowledge of the emergency department, I knew that I had to have help. So I asked my partner to take me to a hospital, and he took me to the Royal Brisbane Hospital, where I met a lovely nurse on triage, and they gave me some medication and put me in a nice quiet room. And I was very lucky in my life because I have a sister that was a registered nurse. She came and she arranged for me to be admitted to a psychiatric unit. And I went to the psychiatric unit for 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a lot of courage to just share that with our audience. And I at times in our lives, many times in our lives, we feel that sense of absolute desperation, but we don't always have that courage to say, "Hey, take me, to somebody else who can help me." And I suppose, it's a what can I say? I'm quite not confronted. I'm quite moved with that you're able to share this with our audience.
Yeah.
And perhaps a responsible thing to do. You did the most responsible thing for yourself and the rest of your family and stuff. And so when you said that I know that in times in my life when I felt really desperate, it's because I've been doing way too many things, and I'm feeling really. So how could you think you could have perhaps not, gotten so low?
I think as women we take on lots of things. We're carers, we're mothers, we're wives, and sometimes we need just to look after ourselves. And after I was admitted to the psychiatric unit, I mostly slept.
Wow.
Because I needed to sleep. But I was really lucky that I had the knowledge. I had private health cover. I had a sister who could support me and get there. I just worry about other people that don't have that medical knowledge or support to seek out help. Because if we broke our leg, people would say, "Oh my goodness, you can't run around with that broken leg. You have to get fixed." But when it's a mental health problem, no one wants to talk to you.
Yes. Yes,
That's
it's just a
really
different part of the body,
part.
the mind, isn't it?
Yes.
So why is that not treated as the same as any other part of our body that something happens to it?
Yeah.
Why do you think? Why do you think that's?
Well, from my experience, when I did tell people, and it was a long time afterwards, I didn't even tell my best friend that I'd been in hospital. I lost friends. I told people and I didn't see them again. And that was really sad. So I feel for people that have mental health problems, that they can't even tell people, "Look, I'm in trouble," without being judged.
It's like a taboo topic.
It is a taboo topic.
Wow.
And it's causing us a lot of mental health problems.
Yes,
that could be solved.
Yes, from just sharing that, hey, life's thrown me in Indian cricket, it's called a googly, where it's a spinner. So life's thrown me a spinner and, hey, I'm dealing with some serious stuff here and it's affecting my mental health and I need, I suppose I'm trying to normalize these kind of things because life is not always a piece of cake,
No, that's
and it's okay to talk about stuff like this. And I'm so grateful that you've shared that with me, Deb. It really takes courage and a high level of vulnerability to talk about your life in this way. So thank you for that. I'm sure many people would benefit just from hearing that you were in this low position and you had the courage to get yourself into a professional place where you could be supported.
And I must say, it was probably one of the best things that's ever happened in my life, which sounds really strange. But I'd suffered from anxiety since a child, and I only was offered medication and some counselling. And when I went to hospital, I actually did cognitive behaviour therapy that set me up for the rest of my life. And I have never been in hospital since. So I was actually benefited so much that I didn't need the system again.
Wow, so you got good life skills, coping skills.
Yes. So
tell us a bit
amazing?
about that. What kind of skills?
They taught me about meditation, acceptance, how you're going to react next time that you have a stressful event, just therapy in ways of coping with stress and depression. And I was never offered that by my GP. And I feel I could have gone there any time and done some of these courses that gave me life skills, not a tablet that I'd have to take for the rest of my life. We can teach you how to live with your mental health problem. And so it was an amazing process.
Well done. That's absolutely well done. A most challenging time in your life, and you were able to get through it. And I know you're now in a really good place, at least it appears to be. And we have lots of fun times together when we go out to common friends' places and walks and stuff. How do you, during COVID, how was that for you? Because you moved to Brisbane from Caboolture just before COVID, you were telling me.
Yes.
And again, a new environment for you, a new suburb, a new everything. How was that for you?
At first, it was really hard. I didn't know anyone in the neighbourhood except my daughter, who lives about a 5-minute walk away with my lovely granddaughter. And so I used to go for walks in the park by myself and go right down to the river. And then the young couple next door fostered a baby, a young girl that was 2 months older than my granddaughter. So we would put out mats in the back paddock, the back area of our property.
You'd put what, sorry, in the back area?
Mats.
Mats,
we used to put the babies on the mats and be 2 meters away from everybody. And we used to sing songs in Spanish and in English, and whoever else turned up with their mat and their baby and child and mum. And, it was a great experience. And then I started volunteering because I knew that I had to meet people. And so I used my skills that I used at Caboolture when I used to help out to feed the homeless at Caboolture. I started volunteering to help cook meals for the homeless at Annalee, and eventually ended up at Yeronga Community Centre, where I met a whole bunch of just amazing people. And that's how I integrated into the neighbourhood. I stepped outside the door and just went to volunteer wherever I could.
Wow. So that's a really good a way to cope with stuff. I mean, I remember hearing about this, when we're going through stuff in our lives, if we think instead of keeping the focus on us and our own stuff, put it on somebody that's less fortunate than you, and which sounds like what you did. You went out and volunteered to help other people, and through that process, you met amazing other people, and they've possibly been your circle of friendship now, isn't it? I think they have.
Yeah. And I did it at Caboolture, and it was just amazing when you talk to these homeless people as you're serving out their dinner, and you just say hello to them, and they'll say, "No one said hello to me this week. Not one person has gone by them and said hello." So just the sheer fact of saying hello to someone makes a huge difference.
You're amazing, Deb.
So, no.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, when you're going through stuff in your life, to be able to still go out and reach out for help. I think that's a key skill to have. And I love that during COVID, you said you take your mats and sit 2 meters away from each other. We used to do driveway dinners in our suburb. That was fun as well. Every Sunday we would come out and you'd have your dinner on your driveway, and the neighbor would have dinner on their driveway, and we'd wave out and have conversations across the road. And so there are ways to get around anything if you want to.
Yes, and I think you have to. One of my mottos is chase the joy.
Wow.
Because the joy is not going to come knocking at your door.
Say that again.
Chase the joy.
Nice. Yes.
Because it's not going to come knocking on your door.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to get out and find it.
Absolutely. Not everybody. Like in our world today, we're so busy. Nobody's dreaming about, hey, Deb's dealing with something. I'm going to ring her up, unless you know her. But the responsibility in some ways lies with ourselves to reach out for help and ask for it. And sounds like your life has been one of exactly that. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having this conversation with you. And thank you for making yourself so vulnerable and sharing with our audience all the many times that, you've reached out and done stuff to help yourself. You're a big inspiration. And I'm so happy that I asked you to come.
Thank you, Carolyn.
My pleasure, Deb. Oh, just one last question. One last question. If you had to give advice to somebody who was dealing with stuff in their lives, what would that be?
Try to look outside yourself would be mine. Mm-hmm. And if you need help, definitely seek it, because the help is out there and it can change your life. by having the right help.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.